All right. Now we are in effect. We finally made it. We finally made it. Finally made it. After 3-week hiatus, I'm happy to announce that the Brandon Robertson Soul Hour is back. We are back here live, everybody. Episode 7 of Brandon Robertson's Soul Hour. And joining me today are three gentlemen who I consider my close friends, my mentors, gentlemen that I've been playing with for over 4 years now. Can't believe it's been that long. It's gone by quick. I have the magnificent. I'm gonna start to my left and go all the way like the Brady Bunch. In the corner here we have Mr. Lew Del Gatto, straight from NY, who is a former member of the Saturday Night Live band, and he is now residing down here in the Southwest Florida area. He is the artist director for I believe it's the what's the name of your group, Lou? The one that
the series is called All That Jazz. It's Naples Philharmonic Jazz Orchestra.
Yes.
Series is called All That Jazz. And we bring guest artists to play with our 6-piece band.
All right. Now, Lou.
Dan is a member, yeah.
Lou is also not only a phenomenal arranger and composer, but he plays all of the woodwind instruments that you can think of. I can't play none of them, so he has that one. So this is Lew Del Gatto, everybody. Welcome him to the show. To the bottom left corner,
thank you.
The main man himself, Mr. Dan Miller, coming all the way, hailing from Chicago. Miller, let's see, he has an impressive resume. It's a lot to name here, so I'll try to see if I can get through most of it. You have Maynard Ferguson, Harry Connick Jr.'s big band, Jazz and Lincoln Center. Goodness gracious, Dan, you've played with so many people. I can't. I lose track of who you play with, but he's also a wonderful educator. He was one of the first people I met when I moved to Southwest Florida, and he's also part of that sextet that performs for the All That Jazz series at the Artist Naples down in Naples, Florida. He also is a adjunct trumpet professor at University of Central Florida, where he teaches the trumpet studio and he runs a few of the combos. So welcome, everybody. Welcome, Mr. Dan Miller, onto the show. My man.
Thank you, Brandon.
And now, last but not least, on the kit, coming from Philly, Mr. Tony has been in the education. He's been in the education realm for over 25 years. He is a phenomenal drummer who's played all around the Philadelphia area. Primarily known for formerly being the drummer for Ben Vereen. If anybody who ever watched the show Star, I know us young folks, we got introduced to Ben Vereen through that show, and I actually had never heard of him until I found out that Tony played with him, and then I still didn't know who he was until I saw the show Star, and I was like, oh man, this dude is, oh, okay. So, and by the way, Tony, I have a question for you about that in a little bit that I did some research on and I found out. So I didn't know if you knew about it, but if you did, I'd like to get your insight on it.
Sure.
And these three gentlemen, including myself, we are Dan Miller, Lew Del Gatto quartet that performed every Thursday at the Bell Room in downtown Fort Myers. I think, and Dan and Lou, Tony, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt as though we've had the longest running successful jazz night in Southwest Florida. I mean, I will argue that. I don't know what it was before I got here, but since I've been here.
Well, we've been running 4 years. It was June 15th, 2016. So we've been running every Thursday since for 4 years straight. So, I mean, that's really a great long running gig, especially one where we're able to play whatever we want, however we play it, without any kind of musical restrictions, as sometimes you encounter when you're playing in certain supper clubs or restaurants or other nightclubs, So
Right.
Steve and Denise Hollister, who own the club, really let us rip it in there. So that is one of the unique things about it. And that's what all the players who fall by from New York or Chicago or wherever they're traveling and come and hang and play, they all comment about that. So
Yeah, man. It's what I love about living in Southwest Florida is the sheer amount of support that we get from the musicians in the community. It's I haven't had any issues yet that would make me feel as though that people aren't welcomed when they move here. And there's a large gap in terms of the ages that exist here in Southwest Florida. So the younger population that lives here, man, they benefit so much from having guys like you here because of the abundant amount of experience the three of you possess, and collectively, I mean, we're talking like what, a 45 plus history. And I'm not saying y'all old like that. Don't take it out the context. I'll just say.
I am.
So to jump right into it, guys, how's everything been for you all, man? What's been going on? I mean, I talk to you all regularly, but what's life been like since we've been on lockdown?
I've just been in the house. I'm not going out. Just practicing, writing,
Mhm.
doing some Zoom things, watching the tube, cooking. That's it,
All right.
well, when our last hit was at the Barrel Room, as a matter of fact, that you mentioned, it was March 12th. And that was also the night that Terrell Stafford and Bruce Barth and Tim Warfield were playing downtown. So we ended up playing down there, went over to hang with them caught the end of their set. And then we hung out super late till, I don't know, about 2:30 till they closed the bars.
Yeah.
And that was the same day that they canceled the Sarasota Jazz Festival. And so those guys were supposed to play there. So they flew back to Philly the next day. And I was supposed to hit with Randy Sankey that Saturday with the quintet, and everything was canceled. So for me personally, all my work was canceled, but fortunately I was still teaching all my classes and lessons and seminars at UCF through the end of April. And, I've been teaching private improvisation on Skype for the last 4 or 5 years already. So I was able to transition into maintaining many of my students who still wanted to do it, of all instruments. So been all just like Lew, just been practicing and teaching and not doing anything. I've been listening to all these records that I bought.
Yeah.
They were just stacked up against the wall for, I would go to Denver and do a jazz camp. They got these killer record stores out there. So bring back a stack of records and just lean them against the wall. So I've been playing them all and wearing them out. So all music oriented, basically everything I'm doing, just trying to,
stay sane.
Yeah, we're trying to play and trying to relax.
Yeah.
What about you, Tony?
Well, life has been pretty much the same, other than the fact that we're not going out to work 4 or 5 nights a week, and that leaves a big hole. It's a shame that we don't have the ability to go out and look forward. We look forward every day. At least I do. I shouldn't speak for everybody, but I think I'm probably right about this. But every time that you have a chance to play, since we're still very much into playing, enjoying playing music and being out with the people, and it's a shame when we don't have that to look forward to.
Yeah.
And I guess we're all just looking forward to getting that back as it's almost a weekly or daily routine,
Yeah, and it's sad because we kind of got a little teaser in there, or Tony and I did,
Yeah.
recently, and we as much as we like to as much as we're trying to adjust and switch over to this virtual platform, it's not the same when you got that interactive live. I mean, some of my most memorable, I guess, moments now, like in present time, has been, the nights we were at the Bell Room and I would always show up Thursday, and sometimes Dan will tell me who's coming, sometimes he won't, and they'll just walk in, and I'm like, oh, it's so and so. He's like, yeah, they coming to play a little bit, So it's, I kind of missed that camaraderie that we were sharing with each other. So, man, I'm glad to hear that you cats are doing well.
Well, that's a nice thing though. When we are playing, that those people do come in and sit in with us and play. That's a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
For sure.
It's a lot of fun.
I wanted to ask you guys some questions here, just some quick, simple questions. And to my audience members who are watching, these three gentlemen, man, their track record is immaculate, man. Like I don't even scratch the surface yet. They've done, and I know I have a lot of friends who would always ask me like, man, you play with all these famous people, and I'm like, if you were to say that to them, I think they would word that a little different, because they're, you guys are my friends, so I don't really look at it from that perspective. It's more so like, these are guys that I play with. They're my homies, So I did have a few questions that people have asked me personally, and I didn't know how to answer that because I didn't want to speak for you guys. So I figured I'd give you this platform to answer it yourself, so you can address that. So the first question is actually for Tony. So Tony, what was it like working with the great singer Ben Vereen, and who are some of the other people that you might have had the pleasure of working with?
Oh, well, that was a great experience. That was, I was a very young player at the time, but it was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a learning experience. There was a lot of things to learn. It's like even today, every time you walk out and sit down and play with a group, it's a whole nother learning experience. But that was a very enjoyable time in my life. It was very interesting to be able to go and see different parts of the country that we were in.
Mm-hmm.
I played with good musicians. I played with good bands, because we played through like Vegas and Reno and Tahoe in Nevada, and a couple venues in California, and then all up and down the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, that was just a great experience because it was interesting being with him because he had just done the movie Roots. And so he became very well known, and he was a big draw. My very first job with him, he was an opening act. Just the very first engagement, he was an opening act. The next engagement I played, he was the headliner. So people were coming out to see him. Mm-hmm. So he had, at that point, he had his reputation, and big draw. He was a big draw. Places were always sold out wherever he played, they were sold out. So it was a lot of fun. It was great. Musically, it was a lot of fun. Musically, to me, it almost doesn't matter what I play. I'm going to have fun anyway. As long as I'm sitting behind the drums, I'm going to have fun. And that was great. It was wonderful. Some of the stuff we did, some TV appearances and things like that. It was a very interesting time, It was excellent.
I didn't know if you knew this, but I watched the documentary on Netflix about on David Foster, and in the documentary it showed there was a scene in that documentary where he talked about how he almost killed somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I no lie, Tony, me and Angelica were watching the documentary together. And I jumped off the couch and I was like, does Tony know this? Did Tony know that David Foster almost took out his...
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Yeah, well, I think the problem was, I wasn't with him at the time, but I think the general knowledge is that he was out walking and it was quite foggy. So I don't think David Foster ever saw him until it was too late. So it was unfortunate, but he was hurt pretty badly, and he's still out performing today. And that was quite a while ago. So
yeah, okay,
yeah.
was just curious if you knew that or not. I was like, man.
Oh yeah. I knew that. Yeah, I'm in touch with the guys. Some of the guys that still work with them. There's some of the guys that I worked with in the band are still with them.
Oh.
So so they, I'm in touch with them. They let me know certain things that are going on.
All right, that's what's up.
Yeah.
Well, my next one. Thanks, Tony.
Sure.
My next question is for Lew. So Lew, you're highly known down here in our area for being a former member of the Saturday Night Live band. And and correct me if I'm wrong, were you part of the original band that started, or you came like a few years after they had?
No, I did the first year. I was working with Paul Simon, and we did the second show that they ever did. And I found out they were looking for a contractor, and so I went to see Howard Shore, and I got the gig as a contractor, but I couldn't play in the beginning. After I was there a couple of years, Lew Marini and I played flute duets all the time on Saturday afternoon, and Howard wanted me to play in the band, and it was against the union regulation. That was the deal. I was supposed to be a non-playing contractor. But then I went and played, even though it was against the rules. I'm a rule flaunter anyway. So then after a while, then the next season somehow the rule changed. I don't know why or how. And so then I was in the band. That was the fourth year I was like where I could be seen. Before that, I was hiding behind a music stand and wearing a hat and trying to lay low, so the camera wouldn't really pick me up. And then that was the first 4 years, and then they cut the band down. So I was one of the people that got let go. And then Lorne Michaels split the next 5 years. He was out of there. Then he came back in '85, and I came back as a contractor and a baritone player and an arranger. And then I was there for 20 years after that, till 2005.
Man, that's some experience, man, to see all those, those legends, man, the Adam Sandlers, the Chris.
Oh yeah, no, it was a great gig. And the thing is, people think, oh, you're a rock and roll band, you're a R&B band. No, it's a studio band, because we had to play any kind of music. We had to play country, we had to play jazz, we had to play R&B, we had to play Broadway style music. It's a studio band. It's a TV studio band, for that show. And, it was a great experience, because it was a lot of fun. We laughed a lot. The band was great. It's in New York. If you have a bad band in New York, then you don't know what you're doing. You know what I mean? So it was a great band. Some great guys came through it, and it's a lot of fun.
Man, that's what's up. I remember when I first met you and I found that out. And so I started like Googling, like, let me see if I can find anything on here. And then all this stuff pops up, and I just see your name like all in like the credits and all of this. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. That right there, I'm glad I didn't know that before I played the first gig with you guys at the Bill. Probably would have crapped myself, because I'd have been like,
nah, come on.
This is ridiculous.
But people talk to me about Saturday Night Live, but I did other things. I was out with Sinatra for a bunch of times. I played with Tony Bennett. I was out with Liza, the big tour with Liza. I did subs in Broadway, subs on Tonight Show Band. So I did a lot of records and jingles around New York in all the years I was there. So I wasn't I didn't do a lot of road stuff, because I got in the studios at a young age, and that's what I wanted to do. And it's the kind of thing, if you're in New York, then they remember to call you. Once you leave and you're out for a while, they kind of forget about you. Lew Soloff always used to say to me, man, I don't know, they don't call me when I come back. I said, Lew, you're leaving town all the time. You gotta, I know you want to play jazz, which is great, but they'll call you, but that takes time for them to know you're here.
Right.
So then all of a sudden you're here, and you get a couple, and then you go out again. But that's the thing. You have to make that decision.
I got a call, Lew, along the lines of that story you're telling. I had moved to New York, and I was working with Harry Connick, and we were appearing on TV quite a bit. And at that time, I used to have a mustache, and I had my hair slicked back, you know. And there was another really great trumpet player in New York whose name was Spanky Davis. You know, and I'm like 6'2". Spanky Davis is like, you know, 5'10", something like that. But we had a similar look. He had that same kind of look, and we kind of, when we played, we looked similar. So I got a call from Spanky Davis, and he goes, man, I'm not getting any calls because everybody thinks I'm on the road because they see me on TV. I'm not getting any calls. Can you please let people know that it's you? And
that's pretty funny.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty funny.
But that goes to your story there, you know, like if you're on the road all the time, then people don't, you know, because they call and then you say I'm out of town,
right?
And then they just move, they call the next cat, So.
Yeah, then the thing is the studio work. If you say no enough, then they're on to the next guy and they forget about you. You know, so I mean, it's the thing is you gotta kind of be. I mean, you can miss a few gigs if you're busy, but if you're out of town and you're not going to be around, then it hurts that part of your career, you know. But you have to make a decision. Do you want to play jazz or do you want to be in the studio? It's just two completely different things, you know.
Well, speaking of New York, you kind of tapped into it because that was going to be my question for Dan. Dan, you know, I always refer to Dan as the modern day jazz encyclopedia because I feel like Dan knows every single record. Like I've never not asked him a question about a record that he did not know the information about. Like it's kind of like insane of how much knowledge that you have bedded in your brain of the jazz history idiom, you know. So every time I talk to you, you always share these stories with me, and I feel like I don't have to read a history book or go to the bookstore and buy a book because I could just ask Dan, like, Dan, what was your this? And he's like, well, you know, in 1956, play with this guy, this studio, he was using this particular microphone. Like, how do you know that stuff?
Well, you know, a lot of that comes from, you know, and this is a big missing element in modern jazz education, in my opinion. You know, we used to buy the record or the CD, and you take it home and you play it. And while it's playing, you're reading the liner notes. So I know everybody who's on the record. I know who wrote the tunes. And then, you know, especially on those Blue Note and those Prestige dates, they had bullet point 1 paragraph bios about each guy written at that time. So Freddie Hubbard's playing at the Blue Coronet in Brooklyn, or he's playing, you know, up in the Bronx in Turbo Village, you know, like where are they working? So you remember all these things from reading all these liner notes. And then, you know, you read the oral history books, like, you know, Art Taylor's book, Notes and Tones, is like the greatest book, you know, and, you know, Swing to Bop, Ira Gittler, that oral history that interviews Dizzy and all these cats. So you read all this material. And then, of course, the most important thing is talking to the cats, you know. So, I mean, it's just like, and I tell all the young people, I said, if somebody comes to town, go to talk to them, you know, like, or wait at the stage or go early or try to find a way to talk to them, because that's where you get all the real information and all the real stories. You know, by talking to these guys. I remember I was in high school and my brother and I went to Joe Siegel's Jazz Showcase to see Art Blakey. All right. So like I'm 16 and I'm thinking, yeah, you know, it would be normal just to bring all 40 records I had with Art Blakey on them and sit there with them on my lap. And when he comes from the airport, ask him to sign my records, you know, thinking he wouldn't mind signing 40 records, right? So they get off a flight. They get off a flight from Japan, right? And they check into the Blackstone Hotel, and Art Blakey sees me and my brother sitting there in the lobby, and I got this stack of records, and he's just like, "What's that there, youngster?" And I said, "Well, Mr. Blakey, we were looking forward to hearing you tonight, and I brought my records, and I was hoping you might sign some of them." And so he's just like, "Just wait a second here." So then he got his keys. Cats went up to the room. We went up to the room. He had us come up there, and he signed all 40 records and talked about each record. You know, so like, I mean, I've got
that's killing, yo.
Every record, you know, all these Art Blakey records, and you know, you know, he signed them all, you know what I mean? Like, you know, like signed every single one of them, you know, and like talk about Clifford Brown, talk about Kenny Dorham, talk about Freddie Hubbard, you know, any questions we had, Hank Mobley, you know, just like talking about the different guys, talked about Bird, you know, and it was great, you know, for me, like I love Fats Navarro, and I was able to ask him about Fats Navarro, and he was able to talk. So talking to the guys is the most important thing, you know, and that's where you get the knowledge and the inside information about what's happening or what was going on, or any kind of thing you want to know about how to do something, you know. Like I used to see Sweets Edison and watch exactly how he did what he did and what he did in modifying his mutes and how he played with the vocalist, or, you know, those things. That's where the knowledge comes from, you know. And now when everybody's downloading MP3s, they're not even getting a whole album. They're just getting a track, and sometimes they don't even know who's on there because they don't have the personnel attached or liner notes attached, you know. So that's a big missing part of modern jazz education. I think that's missing for the young people, is that, you know, they can find the information, like the personnel is all on Wikipedia or discography, but those liner notes that were written by these great writers, guys like Ira Gitler or Leonard Feather, you know, who wrote these incredible detailed liner notes, you know, those are a real great source of information. So, and when I moved to New York in '91, all those guys are still there, you know. I mean, we see, you know, Junior Cook and Clifford Jordan and Lou Donaldson, and you know, it was an amazing time. That was 1991, you know. So, but that's where that comes from, because we love the music, but you make a connection to the information just because you sit there reading the records and you read the books and you talk to the guys, and, you know, that knowledge has to live on, you know, because all those stories and the history is, you know, it's secondary to the music itself, you know, but it's a big part of the history, you know, the personalities and the men and the women who've created this music artistically. What were they like as people, and how did they think, and how did they go about their business? So, you know,
yeah, man,
that's an important part of it, though, you know.
You're absolutely right, and this is why I have stressed to my students that there's no way you can know how to play this music or learn it if you don't listen to it. And I mean, like, and learn about the people who you're listening to, and figuring out, you know, what was life like for them in that time period. That'll help you understand why they made the music they made, you know, and why it sounds the way it sounds. So, my last question for you, Dan, which was a question that a friend of mine asked me. A friend of mine, he was visiting out of town, and he came to the Bell Room one night. We were playing, and you had mentioned that, you know, which I knew this, but he didn't know this. And he came up to me afterwards. He said, "Man, your bandmate played with Tom Jones, like the Tom Jones." I said, "Let me tell you, Dan has shared some stories with me about his time with Tom Jones. It's kind of like, it's almost like it's like the version of rockers that go on tour, but you're a cat in a band, so it's a whole different stance." So just really quickly, like in 2 minutes, you know, how would you sum up your experience working with the great Tom Jones? Like, how was your experience with that?
He was incredible. He still is. He possesses the strongest and the greatest voice of any vocalist I've ever heard. I worked with him for, I think, about 18 months or 16 months. Mm-hmm. And he never had a night where he wasn't 98% plus. Never had a night where it was even less than that. And he delivered the goods every single night, and he killed it every night. And like Tony was saying about Ben Vereen, he sold out every night. You know, we played like mostly 3,500 seaters. You know, and then did 6 weeks in Vegas, you know, 2-week runs at the MGM, 6 2-week runs in Vegas. Mm-hmm. He was killer. And the guy is only behind Paul McCartney and Elton John on the Forbes list. He's worth over $500 million. So he doesn't need to work, but he loves hitting it. And he wanted to work 300 days a year. And we hit it. and the band was an all LA band, except the drummer was from London. So we would work nonstop, and we would just have 3 days off as a turnaround at the end of Vegas. So instead of flying home to New York on one day, having a day off, and flying back on the next day, the crew was from Cleveland, and we used to go to LA and just hang at the Beverly Garland Hotel for 3 days and then fly back out. So when I was with him, I didn't go home. I wasn't home for like almost 8 months that first time. But the band was burning. He was great.
Mm-hmm.
The 3 girl singers, Darrell Holden, and the vocalists were amazing. Mm-hmm. And the band was, it was a great experience because Tom was killer. And we did all, he liked to sing all 60s R&B, Tower of Power. And it was a great gig, because there would be big stars backstage every night to come and hang.
All the time, right?
People, like,
right.
James Brown came 4 nights in a row in Vegas one night. It was just
who did James Brown?
Yeah, and I'm like, here's James Brown, and it was just amazing, So people came to see him, every big celebrity, and he was generous with the guys. He loved everybody, treated us with class and respect, and everything was first class. And but bottom line is, every time he stepped on the stage, he was dealing, period, and killed it every night.
Man, I my aunt's like a big, huge like Tom Jones fan, so I always tell her, like, I was like, yeah, I play with one of the guys that played in his band, down where I live, and she's like, does he still play with him? I was like, nah, I mean, he's doing his own thing now, so and then she's like, well, do you think, like, if he ever comes to Florida, we can? I was like, look, I'm not doing that. Don't. Doing that. That's not happening. That's not happening. We're not going that route. I was like, look, and then I say, what make you think I'm gonna get them for you? I'll probably ask that for myself. I ain't gonna ask that for you. No, but I wanted to get those questions out because those 3 questions a lot of people have asked me, like, at the gigs, or like students have asked me, and I'm like, I've never like tried to pry into you guys' like musical resume because you guys talk about it with me all the time. It's like I don't need to like, whoa, my gosh, tell me, because we just talk about it in casual conversation. And for me, that's really how I learn, is just through a casual conversation, not trying to let's say dwell on the fact that, man, you play with so and so. Like, I mean, we're all, so we kind of all get it. We kind of all get that dynamic. It's the, or like the 4 of us understand that hang is real. Like I tell the young folks, you got to be part of the hang. You can't just show up to a gig and then leave. You got to hang. That's the only way to know who you are. When you move to New York, I mean, all my friends that went to New York, they say they didn't sleep for 2 or 3 weeks straight because they were out every single night, like making sure that people knew they were there. So thanks for clarifying that. So right now, everybody who's watching, who's now tuning in live, we're gonna get right into the music portion of the show. And so I think I'm gonna switch it up. I know I said I wanted you guys to do all 3, but I think I'm gonna switch it up. So I like for each of you to pick one of the 3 tunes off your list, either Freedom, Life, or Preservation, or
Perseverance.
And whichever one you pick, the other 2 have to select. The other 2 cannot select that one. So let's say if Dan picks Perseverance, well then Lew and Tony, you can't use one of those. You'd have to use
right.
So like
right.
That.
You got it.
So Dan, since I have you up, you're up. For Life, or for Freedom, you chose Release Yourself by the Graham Central Station. For Life, you chose A Song for You by Donny Hathaway. And then for Perseverance, you chose Aretha Franklin's Rock Steady, which that is killing. So which one of those 3 would you like to select, my friend?
I want to talk about the Donny Hathaway, A Song for You.
Okay, all right. So everybody, the tune that wait, I got it here. Okay, so right now we're gonna go ahead and put in the chat. If you're watching this right now, we're gonna put in the chat a link to that song so you guys can check it out as Dan is talking about it. This is off of the self-entitled album Donny Hathaway, and this is A Song for You. So if you want to click on that link, and Dan will give you just a little perspective of why he chose that. So for this, so what I had to each member do is I came up with 3 keywords that kind of represent what we're dealing with currently in our times. So the 3 keywords are life, freedom, and perseverance. And I asked them to choose a record that represents one of those 3 elements. So Dan, since you chose life, why is this one important to you, and what made you select this too?
Well, when you first explain the concept of the show and the music that we were thinking about choosing from, I started to think a lot about the music I used to listen to when I grew up and the music that I still love today, and I'm from Chicago, and Donny Hathaway, to me, is the greatest voice of that era. I think his voice is incredible. He's from Chicago, and what people mean. And this song, his first record was called "Everything Is Everything," and to me, like if I was picking one record, it would be that record. But and not only was he a great vocalist, as everybody knows, but he was an incredible jazz pianist. In fact, he led a trio, a straight ahead trio in Chicago in the 60s for many years, starting in the mid 60s. And all the arrangements on the first record, that Everything Is Everything, which is recorded there at Universal in Chicago with a full big band and orchestra, he wrote all the arrangements.
Wow.
He was an incredible artist, but his voice, to me, is the greatest of that era. And this song, the second record, he did a lot of tunes written by other people, because Everything and Everything, Everything Is Everything is an incredibly heavy record with very serious political overtones that really speak to everything that's happening today. And it was immediately a hit record, a huge record. And so there was demand for an immediate follow-up record, because he sold hundreds of thousands of copies immediately. And so he made this second record. And to me, this song is so deep, as when we think about life and everything that we go through in the times. And love is such a huge part of our lives and relationships and everything that we go through in our time. And you hear him bearing his soul completely on this recording. And I think it is one of the great single recordings of all time. So I love Donny Hathaway. The records he made with Roberta Flack are incredible. He is, to me, I always felt like, of the previous generation, like Jackie Wilson is like the greatest pure singer of soul music that I ever heard, Jackie Wilson. And you talk about Tom Jones, we talked about all these cats, but I love Jackie Wilson, but this song really always speaks to me, and I love it very much. And and I would recommend anybody that's out there that's not familiar with the music of Donny Hathaway, if you listen to this. But that record, Everything Is Everything, is an incredible masterwork of his genius. And of course, his life was cut short, sadly. But the music lives on, just like You know, when we get upset about, people think, oh, what if Charlie Parker had lived, or what if Clifford Brown had lived, or John Coltrane died when he was 40? What if he were going on? But the legacy of genius and great music that they left behind is eternal. Yeah, and that's what we were talking about, you know, like earlier with the students. You know, it's important for them, not only, you know, the music is always there. Charlie Parker will live forever. Louis Armstrong will live forever. And the music of Donny Hathaway is incredibly beautiful. And this song, to me, is very special.
Yeah, thank you for that, man. Because that's, you know, Donny Hathaway is someone who I got put on by my uncle when I was in high school. And particularly the song "The Ghetto," that was like one of the first records I got introduced to. And then James, who was my first guest on the show, he picked the song "Someday We'll All Be Free," and that's a heavy record, man. I listened to that record like that whole week, and I was like, man, this is such a heavy record right now. So yeah, Donny Hathaway is definitely the man. So thank you, Dan, for that. I appreciate that. Lew,
yeah,
my man. Lew, so you have either Freedom or Perseverance. So you picked Marvin Gaye, What's Going On, for Freedom, and Al Green, Let's Stay Together, for Perseverance. So which one of those two do you want to tackle? Because both of them are kind of
kind of what?
You know, one wants to stay together, the other one wants you to figure out what's up.
Yeah, well, freedom is, I'll do freedom. Freedom is important because he's talking about, I mean, the what's going on tune. He's talking about what's happening in society. The same crap is happening today, you know. Mm-hmm. And the thing about that, I think we talked about this on the phone, is that you know, he it was his 11th studio album, and he presented this to him to Berry Gordy at Motown, and Berry didn't like it. He thought it was too jazzy. He thought it wouldn't do anything. So he went and recorded it himself. And then, you know, finally they, you know, people at Motown heard it, and they thought it was great, and they released it as it was. Plus, it's got, you know, the great James Jamerson playing bass. I mean, supposedly the bass part was written out, but I doubt if that whole bass part was written out. I found my doubts about that.
I found a transcription of that bass line, and you can't read it.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it said it was written. I mean, I looked it up. Wait, I got to see. It was there's a great arranger that worked for Motown at the time, and like, I can't remember his name. You know me, I can't remember anything. But they said he wrote the bass line out, and I said, I read that, and I said, nah, he might have sketched a lot of it, but Jamerson was unique unto himself. You know, his bass lines were. I mean, listen to all the stuff he did for Michael Jackson and all those other. He wasn't the only bass player. This other friend of mine, this guy actually happened to work with, Bob Babbitt, was also a bass player, and he's also actually on this record. And he was working for Motown at the same time. In fact, my friend, this guy, Tony Camillo, that I was working for, brought him to New York to do a bunch, because we were doing all kinds of R&B records. And he brought him and his drummer, Andrew Smith, to New York. And they were the basis of the rhythm section that did, we did Midnight Train to Georgia and a whole bunch of records like that, you know, and my friend, he passed away. I saw him down here one time, but he passed. But he was a great bass player. But still, Jamerson was still the cat. I mean, he really was the cat.
Yeah, you know, man.
I mean, it's a great record. He sings great. The whole thing is great. You know, the little alto thing got on there by accident. Somebody played it on a demo, and he didn't think anybody would like it. And then they liked it, and it's just a fantastic record. It's a long record, you know, and it was a big hit.
You
You
know,
listen to it, it does have a lot of great jazz overtones in it,
what's crazy is that you would hear that song and you wouldn't classify it as, you would classify it kind of like an R&B, but you can hear the rhythm. You hear the drumming.
Oh yeah. Well,
And
that
symbol, and I'm like, yo, that's whoever's playing drums has to have a jazz background.
well, all those guys that work for Motown were all jazz guys from Detroit.
Yeah,
They were all jazz guys, and they were able to play that. And the guitarist, I don't remember all the names, but there's a video on I guess Netflix about that whole rhythm section and that whole time there, and that tells all about them. And they were all jazz guys,
Lou, are you referring to Alan Slutsky, the guitar player that?
I'm not sure about the name. It might have been. I
Yeah.
can't remember anybody's names.
Yeah, he was a guy. He was very much involved in all that stuff, all that historical stuff that was done about Motown.
Yeah, and all those, the thing is that band was all mixed. It was like, there were Italian guys, Jewish guys, black guys. It was like a big mixed. It was a mixed band, and they did all of those great records, and the groove on all that stuff is there. It's happening. I mean, for pop music, that's my favorite pop music. And that was it. No machines. So they just played, and it was fantastic.
Word.
Well,
I have to leave to save the best for last. Mr. Vigilante. I kind of lost track for a second. Dan, you had
Dan did Life, yeah.
And Freedom, so you got Perseverance. So
I do have,
this one.
Yeah.
This was actually one of my, okay, I have a really great story. It's very short, very, very short, because I want you to explain this to the people, Tony. When I was in high school, there was this great, he's already passed away, but he was such a great mentor to me, Buster Cooper, trombone player. I don't know if you guys knew him or not.
I know the name.
He was out of the St. Pete area.
Yeah, I know him from Duke Ellington's band in the 60s.
Yeah.
The Bumblebee, Buster Cooper.
So Buster used to play at this spot called the Gardens, and actually Michael Ross was the bass player. We finally connected the two of that together. I was telling him, like, man, they used to go up there Fridays and Saturdays and watch Buster Cooper play, and it was this like young white guy that was always with these old guys, and he's like, dude, that was me. I didn't know that was Michael at the time, but anyways, they played this tune that you picked. They played by Art Blakey, the Messengers Moaning, who I think Bobby Timmons wrote that tune, right?
Yes, it's tune.
So they started playing this tune, and I was like, man, this is the graunchiest song I've ever heard, because that melody, do do dee ba dee ba do, like graunchy. Hey, I want to.
Yeah, it's front of it.
So I had actually.
Lynn, let me call you back. Okay, bye.
Yo, this is great. This is live. That's why I like live TV. So anyways, Buster had told me, go listen to this record by Art Blakey called Moanin'. This is what the funny part is. I went back to him the next day because it was a Friday. I went back to Saturday. I said, Mr. Cooper, my grandmother was very disturbed when I went to her last night, and I asked, hey, I need you to find me this thing called Moanin'. And she's, what the hell's wrong with you? And I was like, what you know? You don't know about this Moanin'? Come on now. The song Moanin'. And she's like, my grandmother thought I was talking about something perverted.
What?
No, it's a band. It's a band called Art Blakey, and they have this song called Moanin'. And the guy told me I need to get this record called Moanin'. She's like, that's the weirdest title. That's the weirdest title I've ever heard in my life. What are you so he gave me a copy of the record, and that's when that was literally my first introduction to Art Blakey. So you chose for Perseverance, you chose the song Moanin' by Art Blakey, which is off the album Moanin'. So what made you conclude to this tune? What was this for?
Well, some of it has to do with that. There was a lot of there was some perseverance involved with that, and that was one way of trying to persevere. It was through the actual act of moaning, and of course, Dan, with his encyclopedic knowledge of some of these things, knows the actual story, which he has related.
Yes, a lot.
While on the bandstand, I was there twice when he did it, 2 different times. And if he wants to do that now, I'm sure everybody wouldn't mind hearing that if he doesn't,
Okay,
if he feels
I can tell it. It's a short story. I was playing out on Sanibel at this club called Ellington's, Sanibel Island here in Florida. And we come up with Danny Sinoff, the fine pianist and vocalist. And so I come off the stage and I see this lady waving at me. So I go over and I start talking, and she says, "I'd like to introduce you to, this is Bobby Timmons' widow." And I said, "Wow, really? It's a pleasure to meet you." And so she goes, "Please join us. We're enjoying your music so much." So I sat there for the entire 20-minute break, hearing stories about Lee Morgan and Benny Golson and Art Blakey and all these things. And she was so sweet and so lovely. And we go back up onto the bandstand, and she goes, "Oh, wait, come here for a second." And I said, "What?" And she goes, "No, come here." And I lean in, and she goes, "You know that song Moanin'?" And I go, "Yeah." And she goes, "He wrote that about me." So anyway, it was fun. She was I love it.
I'm actually glad that Dan's on to talk about that. But when I chose that tune, that was in my head, what he said. But it's not about that. It's not only about that from my perspective. I mean, there's been many times I was moaning because I had to persevere through any particular situation I was trying to get through at one time, because something could be a real hassle. It could get disgusted with something. So I figured, actually, hey, well, that's what happens. There's been many times when I was moaning about some situation I was in that I just didn't want to deal with, or I wanted to get through it as quickly as possible. So I could just see myself sitting there. Plus, I love the tune. I love Blakey's band. I think Dan would remember this, but that group they were all Philadelphia guys, right? At that time, it was Lee Morgan and Benny Golson, Jimmy Merritt. Yeah. The only one that was from Pittsburgh was Art Blakey, and everyone else was from Philly. So it kind of, that kind of had a connection to me, because I'm proud of that background for them, that they're from there and that I was born and raised there, and I spent my life there until I came to Florida. And so, between that and just when I looked at Moanin', and I love the tune, I love the record, I love Art Blakey and his playing, I like the way he plays everything. And I'm thinking, well, this could be, this could be applied to many things that you have to persevere to get through. So that was my reason for that.
Well, I have had many perseverance nights at the Bell Room, I remember this one particular time Dan brought in I think, what's the tune that Wayne wrote? Lester Leaps In, right? Is that is the tune, right?
Lester Left Town.
Lester Left Town, right? Yeah, forgot that.
Yeah, I was like, and I remember I just remember Dan gave me the chart, and I'm looking at this chart. I was like, man, I've never heard this song before. And I looked at Tony, and Tony's like, "You'll be all right, man. It's okay. Just play." And then we start playing through the form, and then I realized, I was like, good God, these are some pretty hard changes. And like, and I knew, and this is when I knew it was starting to go. It wasn't going downhill, but it was rocky when Dan starts stomping his foot on the stage. Like, that's when I know it's getting real. And he's like, without him telling me, hey, come on. You start feeling that hard stomp on the stage. So those nights that I had to persevere through those moments, it actually helped me grow, you know. So now when I get on stage with the three of you, I'm like, I feel excited. Like, I'm like, man, I think I've arrived to a point where like the cats, they've allowed me to find my voice, you know, within the band, you know, because I think I wrote it on my Facebook. I shared the video of our very first show at the Barrel Room, and I remember I was extremely nervous. I was shaking on stage. I remember it was packed in there, and it was like, I was like, nobody in this building has heard me play before except for Dan. No one has heard me. Like, this is nerve-wracking because this, you know, if you sad, it's like they're gonna go to Dan. It's like, Dan, you know, it's a nice kid and all, but you know, so,
you know, I have to say though, if you don't mind me saying so, that the 3 nights that we played together, because Dan and Lew weren't there, so it was the 3 of us playing with Gerald, you know, all 3 of us playing with Gerald, or the 2 of us playing with Gerald, meaning it's trio. That Dan, I have to tell you, Lew, I have to tell you that Brandon's quite a personality. He handles the people very well. He's not shy. Yeah. He's not shy. He puts it right out there. You know, he's a real personality on stage, you know, and we had a ball, man. It was great. It was a lot of fun, actually, you know. So, yeah, I was, you know, disappointed when you said you weren't going to be playing for a while, but it was good. I wanted you to know.
I miss playing with you guys so much.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I can't wait that we can all be in. The 4 of us can be back there doing that again.
Me
Plus,
too.
having the guys come sit in that do come sit in. That's a ball, you know.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I definitely not only miss playing with you guys, but I know our audience who are watching us live and the people who are patrons, you know, I know they for sure miss us and wish that you know, we could return sooner than later. But, you know, right now we all want to be safe. We all would like to be cautious of like our health and our well-beings and our families and whatnot, our significant others. You know, we just want to make sure that everybody's taken care of. So at the very end of this, we usually, what I do, guys, is I open up the floor for questions. So if anybody who's watching this live right now, if you have any questions for Lew or Tony or Dan or myself, you know, please feel free to write in the chat box in the comment section your question, and that question will get relayed to me, and I will ask the gentleman. Actually, we do got one question that just popped up. This is from Derek. Lew, did you used to play with Jim Foy or George Palmer? The type of work you used to do sounds the same as the work Jimmy used to do.
No, I don't know either one of those guys.
Okay.
Were they in New York?
I assume I don't know who they are. Let's see if we have any. Tony, what part of Philly are you from?
I lived in several neighborhoods. I lived in Port Richmond, Kensington, Fairmount, Bustleton, and Germantown.
I'm 100% Floridian, so all that sounds foreign to me. I actually did have one question for I had a question for Dan. So when you were on the road with Harry Connick, most of the guys that was in that band with you, was his band all like guys that were straight out of school? Because when I look at those pictures, you've shown me pictures of that band, like from like 90, I think 91, somewhere around there. And the whole entire trumpet section, like, with the exception, I think one guy, you guys all look like kids. Like y'all look like y'all just graduated high school.
Well, it was a unique band because this was a band that was essentially half New Orleans and half New York City guys.
Mm-hmm.
And so there weren't a lot of quote unquote college guys in there. You know, I mean, there were guys that went to college, but I mean, they were all the top players from New Orleans. Because when the band started, Harry was traveling with just himself in the rhythm section and picking up orchestras in whatever town he went to. Mm-hmm. So it was Ben Wolf on bass, Russell Malone on guitar, and Shannon Powell on drums was the quartet. And then he brought the best contemporary New Orleans players that played the masters of modern New Orleans music, the absolute cream of the crop. So, you know, Leroy Jones on trumpet, and the late great Lucien Barbrin on trombone, and the great Louis Ford on clarinet. And then there were also the great Craig Klein on trombone and Mark Mullins on trombone. And those were the New Orleans guys. And then the New York City people were Jerry Weldon on tenor saxophone, Ned Gould on tenor saxophone, Dave Schumacher on the baritone. So, and it was a unique band. And in the trumpets, Jeremy Davenport and I were the only guys that were younger than Harry. You know, we were 21 and Jeremy was 20 and Harry was like 22, you know, and all the oldest guy in the band was Lucien. And he might have been, I don't know, in his early 30s. So it was a young band for sure. You know, I mean, Jeremy was 20 and I think Lou was the oldest and might have been 32 or 33. Right. But it was you know, everybody dealing, you know, and it was a soloist in every chair, which is what it made it a completely unique band. Normally there's one guy in each section that plays jazz. But this band was, and some of the greatest players in the world, you know, I mean, Leroy Jones, Lucien Barbrin, Russell Malone, Ben Wolf, you know, Shannon Powell. Right. I mean, these are, and Brad Lee was playing lead alto, you know, and Brad and I were at North Texas together.
I didn't know Brad were in the Harry band together. That's cool.
Yeah, we lived across the street in Denton, and you know, when they called to hire me, they say, you know, somebody that plays good lead alto, and I said, do I ever? And he used to live right across the street from me, so I recommended Brad, and we went out, and that band started June 1st, 1990. You know, so it was a great band. It was a lot of fun, you know, but it was all a lot of serious jazz musicians, you know, both, and it was great because it had all the great New Orleans musicians who were the best, and all the best modern jazz players from New York together in a band, and it was a real brotherhood and a great thing. And we worked a lot, you know, I mean, we worked 300 plus days a year on the road and went all over the world with that band, you know, and it was hearing guys like, you know, just sitting and listening to Leroy Jones solo every night at the end of the trumpet section was exhilarating. And Russell Malone, Lucien, you know, and Harry, of course, you know, Harry is beyond category, really, you know. Yeah. And, so it was a great time, you know, for all of us. And we go to New Orleans every year, Judy and I, and see everybody and try to see all the guys, you know. So hopefully our season will start at Artist Naples because we have Leroy Jones who's going to be our first guest at the end of October. So we would love to have, hopefully, we don't know what the status of the season is over there right now, but Leroy is our first guest, and we always love to have Leroy here because he is
he's
the greatest, you know, without peer.
I remember. All right, well, we got a couple more questions, man. This is actually great because you guys must be the popular group, man. This questions are like flooding right now. Sydney and Steve are patrons from the Bellroom. They come and see us quite often. Do you guys remember Red Heath Big Band?
Ted Heath. British band.
Ted Heath. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They're
British band.
About the band, or if you remember them at all.
Yeah, I saw the band at Carnegie Hall when I was a kid. My father took me.
Who is that band? I'm not familiar
Ted
with
Heath. He's an English band.
British band, yeah.
It was great band.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was the top big band from from the UK.
Right, exactly.
That's right. Right.
All right. They were just wondering if you guys had remembered them.
Oh yeah.
Karen.
So I think Kenny Clare was one of the drummers with that band. Kenny Clare.
Okay.
I think, if I recall.
We go in with you. Oh, I got a. This is to Lew. It's from Kate.
She knows everything.
She wants to know. You picked the song "Let's Stay Together." She wants to know why.
She was there when I did it.
Lew.
Well, because Al Green is he's a reverend. He's a great singer. His stuff is great. Because I have a story about it that I can tell you. Because, but you know that the song is, all of his stuff is really great. That the rhythm section. The thing I like about those records is that they're not overproduced. They're all simple. The small string sections. You know, great funky horn section and everything is real simple about it, and the groove is there. But the thing is, I know what she wants me to tell you, because
you had him. Story. You have to tell it.
I'm going to tell it. Yeah, we had him on this. I don't know. I think it was a 25th anniversary. I can't get all the years together of SNL. He was a guest on that show, but the PAs messed up his ticket, and you know, I don't know. I think Lenny Pickett might have written the arrangement, and we rehearsed the arrangement, but he never showed up for dress. He didn't show up for dress rehearsal, not one rehearsal. He came in like at the last minute, and we're on the air and jumped on stage, and the thing was grooving. It was great. But he got there, and the thing, you just feel the thing go, he lifted it up. I mean, it was just amazing to be in the middle of that, because he was so powerful and he was so excited. Kate happened to, at that point, they would allow people up there, and Kate happened to be backstage. You couldn't get a seat. It was all celebrities. Like backstage, like waiting SNL, you go off the stage and go into the hall, and she was standing there, and he came off stage and he grabbed her and gave her a big kiss. So she always loved that, because it was so exhilarated, because the whole thing sounded just great, and like I said, his performance just lifted the whole band up. You know, it's amazing when you work with people. Sinatra used to do that too. When you work with people like that, to just make it better than it ever was. You know, and you know, he's great.
All right, we got one more question. This is from our good friend Karen up in New York. Her and Chet. Karen, what's up? Hope you're doing well. Hope you and Chet are doing well.
Yeah.
Oh.
She's
hey, Karen.
She said, Dan, did you ever play with Donald Byrd?
No, but I met him a few times, and you know, I loved his music, of course. The group he had with Pepper Adams, and you know, he's a Detroit guy. He's one of Barry Harris's great students. You know, the methodology, and you know, all those Detroit guys that studied with Barry, you know, including Pepper Adams and Curtis Fuller and Yusef Lateef and Charles McPherson and Lonnie Hillier, all these guys that came from Detroit. And Donald Byrd was really the first one that came to New York in 1955 and made 1 million records as a sideman, and then got big, you know, producing with the Blackbirds in the late 60s and such. But and then he did play trumpet for like 15 years. And then, like in the mid '80s, he said, "Oh, Joe Henderson's." You know, they made a record together on Landmark, and so that's like when I was in high school, and they had either, I can't remember if I think it was the International the IAJE, International Association of Jazz Educators Conference, which is now GEN. But back then, and I think they had a conference. I think it was in Chicago, but we went. And I met him there, you know, and he was there with Clifford Brown's widow, LaRue Brown Watson, so it was very exciting to meet him and to meet her and to talk to him, so I never worked with him, but we did get to meet and got to spend some time together talking, and then I would see him from time to time in New York, but I never did play with him. No.
Okay. All right. Let's see if we have. I don't think we have any more questions at the moment, so we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up. But everybody who's watching, thank y'all for tuning in for this episode of Brandon Robertson's Soul Hour. I'm really enjoying these episodes that I've been doing. I've had a chance to talk to some incredible people. Next week I have an incredible guest coming on. I'm not going to reveal who she is because I want to leave that as a surprise, but I'm super excited to talk to her because she's just a legend in her own right. And I'm looking forward to the future episodes that I have coming up. I'll be speaking with I have 2 New Orleans series episodes that I'm doing where I'm talking with cats from the Nojo band, and I'm also going to be speaking with members of the Jason Marsalis group, so I'll be rapping with those cats. And then in August I have my man Alexander Claffey, bass killing, monstrous bass player out of New York. He's just running the scene up there. Also one of the faculty members at the San Francisco Music Conservatory, Dr. Simon Rowe. He is the director over the Dave Brubeck Jazz Summit, which I'm actually a fellow faculty of that group, which is out of Lake Tahoe. So I'll be interviewing him coming up soon, and Adrian Crutchfield, who is not only a close friend of mine that I went to college with, but he was one of the last members to play with Prince, like the last 5 years of his life. Got to tour with Prince, Lionel Richie, Bette Miller. I mean, his resume is pretty impressive as well. So I got a lot of people coming on the show that be expected. So please believe we're going to have some more fun with this. So to my guests, I love you all, man. I love all 3 of you guys, man. Lew, Dan, Tony, y'all are my brothers for life. Thank you guys for doing this show. Thank you for everybody who tuned in this evening, and be on the lookout for next Tuesday's episode, the 8th episode of Brandon Robertson Soul Hour. So everyone to be blessed. Y'all stay safe. Wear your mask. Please wear your mask. I'm telling you, don't try to play yourself. Don't. DJ Khaled says it perfectly. Don't play yourself. Don't play yourself. Wear your mask. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Y'all have.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Brandon.
Great.
Thanks.